Good morning and welcome back to the current review on Central News Live. My name is Thamsanqa Tu, sometimes known as TT, sometimes known as Chairman. We have a very, interesting and impactful conversation today. I think because it's about it affects the workers of this country and many of them, because people who are affected there are quite many. And this morning we have a conversation with Sinawo Tambo of the EFF, Member of Parliament, and we will be talking about the party's recent condemnation of Finance Minister Kotongwana's alleged failure to hold private security companies and municipalities accountable for the theft of workers' pension funds. With billions of rands at stake, this conversation will explore the EFF's demand for justice and their call for the establishment of a parliamentary ad hoc committee of inquiry to tackle this widespread corruption. Please stay tuned as we unpack these issues and discuss what it means for the future of workers' rights in South Africa. Thank you very much, Sinawo, for joining us. The EFF has been very vocal about the theft of workers' pension funds by private security companies. Could you start by explaining how this issue came to light and why it has become such an important issue for the EFF?
Thank you very much, and greetings to everyone who's tuned in today. So essentially, the matter was brought to our attention through a report published by the Financial Sector Conduct Authority, the FSCA, which is the financial regulator here in South Africa. And in its report, which was released on the 1st of September in 2023, the FSCA basically highlighted that there were a number of private security companies and local government municipalities that are not compliant with Section 13A of the Pensions Fund Act. Now, this act basically stipulates that all employers must pay towards pension funds of workers to ensure their financial security when they are either unemployed or need to go on maternity leave or anything that is labor-related that impedes on their work. So the FSCA's report was quite damning because it revealed that more than 700 municipalities were not compliant with this Pensions Fund Act, and they owed pension funds of municipal workers over 1 billion rand. And in terms of private security companies, more than 2,224 of them were not compliant with the Act, and they were owing the pension funds 6 billion rand. So what essentially has happened, according to that report by the FSCA, is that money was deducted from workers' salaries on a monthly basis, like all of us. Your pay as you earn, your UIF, is deducted from your salary. It appears as deducted from your salary slip. But these employers, which is more scary when it comes to municipalities, are not handing over that money to pension funds. And we, of course, then raised the alarm earlier this year, around January. And from that, we met with the Labour Department, Department of Labour of South Africa, the National Bargaining Council, the CCMA. And we came to realize that these are not institutions or entities that have the capacity to deal with this matter because it is of financial nature. And the laws that are being breached are financial as well. We then wrote Minister Kotongwana in February. He acknowledged receipt through his office of our email and has never returned to us since. And the clear proposals we made to Kotongwana is that he has to look into this. But secondly, we must avoid a situation where municipalities in South Africa, government departments, and state-owned entities give contracts to private security companies that are in breach of this law, contracts to private security companies that are in violation of labor laws in South Africa, because that would mean the state is complicit in this theft of workers' monies. We gave him that guideline. We told him to audit. He didn't do that as well. We told him that to give them 3-month repayment periods to pay back the monies of workers. He didn't do that as well. And here we find ourselves today having to escalate the matter to Parliament.
And with your suggestion of the ad hoc committee of inquiry, what do you hope for this this inquiry to achieve in the end? What can it actually do practically to help these workers who have been affected?
Look, the workers who are affected, which we must remember, there's some who are already out of the system of either municipalities or private security companies. There's municipal managers who were either in the system at the time and are no longer at the system, who are part and parcel of the disappearance of this man. So we need to track them down, bring them before the inquiry, get their testimony, get them to account as to what happened. What did you do with the money when it reached your coffers as the employer? Why did you not hand it over? Where's the money now? So this inquiry will basically have the capacity to subpoena those who are implicated in this, to call forward municipal managers, to call forward trade unions, to call forward national bargaining councils, to call forward the regulator, the Private Security Industry Regulating Authority, SIRA as well, which is complicit, to call forward the Ministry of Finance, to ascertain how were, firstly, private security companies given operation licenses when they were violating the law. And secondly, how does it happen that municipalities would deduct money from workers? These are state government spheres. How do they deduct money and then not hand it over to pension funds? The most implicated one is George Municipality, which is under the DA. They haven't paid towards their pension fund in 240 months. That's almost 20 years. So we need to be able to track a litany of people historically who have been involved in this process. And then, of course, it must be constituted by multi-departments because it's such a significant issue that it affects labor, affects the breaking of the law, and affects finance. And of course, must be constituted by various members of political parties as well. So that's what we seek to achieve. We seek to recover the money, get it back to the workers. If the workers are deceased, get it to their families, because those families are destitute today when people have been working for companies and municipalities for so long.
And these ad hoc committees, Sinawo, do they have the power to be able to recommend to, say, the NPA to prosecute people who have been found wrong?
Absolutely, absolutely. It will have the power to subpoena, it will have the power to set new legislation in terms of parliamentary oversight over matters of pension. Then it will have the power to recommend to the SIU, to the NPA, measures which can be executed to recover the money which has been lost. I think a crisis that we're all possibly not aware of that is going to arise from this almost decades theft of workers' money is that most recently the Revenue Laws Amendment Bill of 2023 was signed into law, the two-pot system, where workers are allowed to access their pension funds. Now, what will happen in an instance where these workers whose pension funds have not been paid forward and have been kept by their employers, when they want to go withdraw that money, they are going to encounter a situation where there's no money there. This is going to cause a lot of heartache, might even lead to violence, because how must one feel when they go and trying to withdraw their pension according to new legislation, and they are told that their employer has not been paying towards their pension funds? So municipal workers in South Africa, private security companies in South Africa are going to be confronted. There's going to be possible unrest because people are going to find that the hard-earned money that has been taken from them has been looted.
And you mentioned that there's over 2,200 private security companies that are implicated in this theft. That, like, the multiple effect of this is that the workers involved there are in the hundreds of thousands. And
Absolutely.
The prospect you are talking about of bringing about an unrest is quite scary for our country.
Absolutely. And this is something that we're going to raise. So in the establishment of an ad hoc committee, you must write to the Speaker outlining its necessity. And part of our reasons and logic to outline the necessity of this ad hoc committee is that, number one, the effectiveness of the two-pot system legislation is affected by the fact that pension funds are empty. They've been stolen from by employers. Number two, the fact that there is a possible risk of security in South Africa, because when a worker is told by a pension fund administrator that go back to your employer because they haven't been paying your pension in a year, in 2 years, in 5 years, so we don't have money to give you your rightfully earned money that was deducted from you, which you know was been taken from your salary, those employees are going to go back to their bosses. And this is a confrontation that is likely to lead to violence. And if it's at this magnitude, where hundreds of thousands of private security workers, hundreds of thousands of municipal workers in particular, we might even face challenges of service delivery, workers downing their tools, and protests in general. So municipalities are going to be dysfunctional. Private security companies are going to be in confrontation with their employees. So the level of violence and service delivery impact is going to have. And to ensure that this money is paid back, we have plans. And that is why we say we suspect he's complicit, because why would he ignore such a pending crisis?
Yeah, and in light of these events, you have suggested some very drastic measures, including the revoking of operational licenses for the non-compliant companies. How feasible is this approach? And in addition to this, what do you think is the solution to this problem, especially for the private security companies, which I think some of them may not be in existence anymore?
Yes, that is a huge, huge challenge. So when we met with the Financial Sector Conduct Authority, they raised exactly what you're raising, that private security companies, once they're in areas for a particular number of years, they shut down and open up under a new name. So that's one of the challenges that the ad hoc committee is going to have to address: tracing the money, tracing people who've been creating private security companies for 2-3 years and shutting them down when they realize that they're on the verge of non-compliance. So we have to track down those either defunct or private security companies that have changed their names. And also, we have to ensure that this justice is applied to our people. It's as simple as that. So we're tracing the money, and the revoking of operational licenses is something that should be implemented at the level of Treasury and at the level of the regulator. The first problem we had with the Minister of Finance, and we approached him very humbly, is that how are departments of government, which are under your executive authority, awarding tenders to companies that are non-compliant with South African laws? You can't award a tender to a company that's not paying the pensions of workers. So Treasury is complicit, either actively or inactively, in the looting of workers' money. And it's unfortunate that we have now had to take this to a confrontational level when we try to resolve it to ensure that we avoid a crisis that we're going to enter now as it relates to the two-pot system where pension funds are empty.
And given the serious nature of these accusations, how has the public responded, as far as you could notice in your observations, and what has been the reaction from other political parties or civil society groups regarding your stance as the EFF?
Look, there's been a positive reaction from the public. The EFF alone, through its labor desk, has received about 246 complaints relating to 246 companies which are non-compliant. So over the past year, we had opened up a channel for workers who are affected by this, or their spouses or their children, to reach out to the EFF, name the company that has been withholding the pension fund of either their siblings or themselves or their parents or their mothers or their brothers, so that they can give us so we can develop our own database of affected companies, inclusive of the one that the FSCA has reported. So that has been a positive response, because we are not only raising this at the level of media or at the level of writing to Parliament. We've interacted with these security guards. We know their names, we know their faces, we know their stories. And that is why we're dealing with the matter in this regard. In terms of other political parties, I'm not surprised that they've been unwilling to join into the call of the repayment of workers' monies, because the municipalities which have not been paying towards the pension funds but deducting from workers are governed by some of these political parties. George local municipality, which is 240 months in areas, Mossel Bay municipality, which is governed by the DA, which is also more than 200 months in areas. Umsunduzi local municipality is more than 100 months in areas, and it's governed by the ANC. In Newcastle, which is governed by the IFP, they're in areas of more than 100 months as well. So the Grand Coalition, the so-called government of national unity, is presiding over this lack of payment of pension funds of workers. So we won't hear their voices, we won't hear them speaking out. And perhaps that's why Kotsi himself, as an ANC Minister of Finance, has been unable to cooperate with us.
And the EFF has also linked the minister to a previous scandal involving the misappropriation of pension funds from the tax-tied workers. Can you provide more context on this accusation and how it relates to the current situation?
Yes, so Enoch Kotongwana and his wife were respectively the chairperson and director of a company known as Canyon Springs. And this company took a loan from Trillionaire, a company called Trillionaire Investments, which had essentially been managing the provident fund and pension fund of textile workers, clothing and factory workers. And this company called Canyon Springs took this loan from Trillionaire, which was basically a fund administrator of the textile workers pension fund, took a loan of up to 93 million from this fund, with a plan to apparently repay it. Now, this was a pension fund that looked after 20,000 workers, who a majority were women. And this loan was taken when he was the chairman of things. There was a conclusion of that inquiry was that it was a misjudgment rather than a misappropriation of funds, which is completely ridiculous, because he knew that he was drawing a salary from a company that was taking a loan from a pension fund. And when they were asked to repay that money, they were unable to. Until today, those 20,000 workers are destitute. Now, this is the character of the Minister of Finance in relation to pension funds. And we highlighted that case to try to understand what is making him so reluctant. So his dubious relationship with pension monies of workers in the past makes us doubt that he's got the integrity to preside over this matter fairly.
And finally, Mr. Tambo, what message does the EFF want to send to the workers affected by this theft and the broader South African community about the importance of safeguarding workers' rights?
Look, we want to tell the workers of South Africa, particularly the municipal workers and those who've been working for private security companies, continue approaching the EFF. Don't be afraid of victimization. And ultimately, when the ad hoc committee of inquiry is established, you must be able to present yourselves, because we're going to be having public hearings with those who are affected to hear their stories. We're going to need that testimony. So everyone must be brave enough to stand up and speak out. Private security guards have been launching protests through their unions, and we encourage them to continue to stand up and raise this matter sharply. We're not going to stop raising it. It's not a matter that affects the middle class or those who are well off. Hence, it has not been gaining the necessary traction that it has been. But the EFF, which is an organization that belongs to security guards, that belongs to the poorest of the poor and the vulnerable, is going to stand up in your defense. So we are going to further instruct our public representatives in the municipality councils to write letters to municipal managers asking them whether they are up to date in paying towards the pension funds of the employees in municipalities. If they are not, they must tell us how much are they in arrears, and they must also tell us what is their repayment plan. So we're going to see a lot of activism in the legislature and the councils by the EFF raising this issue to ensure that the workers' money is repaid. So this is only the beginning.
Thank you very much, Sinawo Tambo, Member of Parliament in the for the EFF, raising very important issues regarding workers' pension funds which have been misappropriated or stolen. Hopefully, we see the end in a positive way for this, for these affected workers. And thank you very much, Sinawo, for raising these issues. And we hope that you gain the end that you seek.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. That was Sinawo Tambo.